Hi guys, it's Ugo and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be doing my review for Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. This is my first contact with the author. I know I wanted to read Ariadne and I think I have that on ebook. So I listened to Heroes last year and I fell in love with some of the heroes, especially when I knew that she was writing about Atalanta, which was one of the heroes featured in Heroes by Stephen Fry. I thought this could be great. But then I started recalling that she didn't have a lot of story to it. So I was a little bit on the verge. So Atalanta is one of the heroes from early Greece. In her early life, she's left on a mountain to die by her father, and she's rescued in this part of the story by nymphs and by Artemis, who cares for her and says she has to obey for the rules that she owns about virginity and cult. As she grows up to be a great hunter, a great runner, and all of those things. And we follow the story of Atalanta from her childhood till the end of her life. I think this book is interesting in the aspect of showing the female hero of the mythos, because there are not a lot of female characters that are considered heroes except Atalanta. There's gonna be releasing a Medea book about Medea, about Ariadne, but those are not central figures on myths. While Atalanta is central figure on myths, on certain myths that she was part of, like the boar hunt, her own myth about the race, But I feel this story took a lot of part on the Argonauts. So there's a little bit of discussion if Atalanta was part or not of the Argonauts. Some historians and some tellers of the old ancient Greeks said that Atalanta was part of the Argonauts, and there are parts where she's represented on the Argonauts, and there are some others that she didn't come to the Argonauts. So there's a bit of discussion around that, and this retelling takes into she was part of the Argonauts. So most of the story after she becomes a grown woman, is on the Argonauts voyage. And sadly for me, that's what I felt it was unnecessary to bring so much, because she didn't have a very good role. That is Jason, I believe, story. Jason and the Argonauts, I believe. And that's following Jason through Highs of Atalanta. We have their relationship that will shape a little bit our story because of Artemis. But besides that, it's not very interesting, because even the battles they have to fight, only one time you see Atalanta being useful, because I believe it's when they're fighting the giants, and she's very good with her bow and arrow, and on a distance she kills a lot of the giants they are attacking the boat. But we don't see a lot of that. We see when they arrive to this island full of women and they are starting there, she, Hercules, and the other one, I don't remember his name, but the main love interest of her story in the Argonaut saga are against they stay so long, while Jason is very much liking the attention and the honor to be there. But besides that, I think that stretch of the story is interesting from the point of view of the mythology of the story itself, but it's Jason's story. He is gonna defeat the serpent for the Golden Fleece. He's he who has to go against the bulls of fire. So, and Medea who helps them. So I felt a little bit of a meh through that story, because I feel like we should take into consideration a little bit of the other stories. I don't know, if it's a retelling, you could put a little bit more input. I know she's following the Greek history, which is not very prolific on Atalanta, so I don't know how you could make this more interesting, but for me it was like, okay, I'm seeing just Jason's story through the eyes of Atalanta. You get some of the love and it will result in a consequence for her, but besides that part is just Jason's story. When we return to Atalanta's story, it's very fast till the end. You go to the boar, and she gains the aunt. There's a big fight, ended up with a very heartbreaking story for Atalanta and for the Greek myths, because of what happened. And then she retrieves to Artemis, which is kicked because she's no longer a virgin and she's expecting a child. So this is a story about her raising a child and things like that. But then she comes back to her father and becomes the myth of Atalanta, that she was unbeatable on runs, and who wanted to marry her because she wanted to be the queen and or the empress or whatever the title was, but the father says you have to marry, and she said I'm not going to marry because no one is good enough for me. And she beat all the men, and if they beat the man were executed. And I thought that was the big part, and you could bring a little bit more of the joy of her sacrifice, of her thinking, of her doing, and I understand that, but it was so fast, those two parts, and you lost a lot of part of the Argonauts that you don't feel so much of the Atalanta. You feel like she's discovering the world because she was raised on the forest, isolated from humanity, from men, from the conventionals of the Greek society. She was raised by nymphs, so that's very different from, and you get that shock in the beginning, but after that, I think it was very simplistic. I think she could take any chances. Maybe if you do a retelling, for example, do a little more twists, or don't follow so much strictly the myths. I know there is a lot of like, what is the retelling, but I think you could include it a little bit more of her adventures, created more situations, or change a little bit the myth story, not following so much the story itself, and creating a little bit more input from her, because I felt like she was just a second character on her own story, and I think that's not great, especially on the race. The race was like 2 races. On the third, she lost, and they marry, and then they got punished, and that's it. That's the end of Atalanta. So it's not a bad book. It's just it's underdeveloped for what I wanted. It's a little bit a second high story on the main one. It doesn't have a lot of impact, especially on the Argonauts voyage. You have a little bit of a clash of sexes, with some of the crew didn't enjoy her company being a woman, but some of them respecting her when she starts to prove herself as a strong, independent, good fighter, a good, when they are, like, I don't know how to say in English, but rowing, I think it's rowing the ship forward, because they had Hercules, and Hercules is like, he could row the ship alone and never get tired. So I believe that is very interesting on some parts, but I believe the story could have a little more. I think it was not what I was expecting, but I also knew that Atalanta didn't have a lot of meat, so I was hoping that she could fill a lot more of the gaps, creating more stories, even if it was imaginary, creating more situations where she could be useful. And yeah, I think that it was, for me, what it turned me off a little most. It's not it's an entertaining reading, and especially in an audiobook, it was very entertaining to follow. And I was curious about on listening, but at the same time, I felt at the end like, just that. So, it missed something. It was something that you listen and you were like, okay, what else? Okay, let's move on. Not a book that will stay with me for a long time. And yeah, so this is my review for Atalanta. Tell me in the comments if you read it, what you thought, if you read Ariadne, if you think it's different, what are your experiences with the author. I would love to know that. I try to post videos at least once a week. I have reading sprints on Fridays if you want to join, and I have my book clubs down below, as well as my wish list and my coffee. Everything to support this channel is down below, including affiliate links. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in my next video, okay? Bye.